Okay, let's factor the trinomial that we have here. One method for factoring a trinomial is by pulling apart the first term here into factors and the last term into factors. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull it apart because I know that 2x times 2x, which is the product, which makes 4x squared. Then I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to make it a 3y and a 3y. And it's going to be positive for both because a positive 3y times a positive 3y will give you a positive 9y squared. Now by doing this method that I have here, what we're going to do is we're going to look to see, does this work for coming up with the middle term, which is 12x squared. When I do that, I'm going to cross multiply here, and when I do that, I end up with 2x times a positive 3y, I end up with a positive 6y xy. Then I'm going to cross multiply here. This method is only for checking for the middle term. When I do that, notice once again I end up with a positive 6xy. By adding those two products coming out with the sum, notice I come up with a positive 12xy. That checks with the middle term that we have here. Therefore, my factors are going to be these two. So it's going to be 3x plus 3y. And it's also going to be this. Now this is just one method for solving a trinomial. You were taught how to find factors for a trinomial, which is 3 terms, from Math 80. So that's just one way, and whichever way you were taught is the way you should continue to use. Now let's take a look at the next one. This one involves a little bit more because before we can even start worrying about factors, we'll want to factor out the greatest common factor out of all 3. When I do that, I notice that in all 3 I can take out a 2, so I'm going to do that. I also look at the x's, and I can take an x out of each one, at least one x. Now what I'm going to do is, since I was able to take out 2x, that will go on the outside of the parentheses, now I reduce each one of the fractions. So when I do that, I'm left with x squared minus 2 will go into 20, 10, and I'm left with an x, and here I'm left with a 2 will go into 32 16 times, and the x's cancel out. So there. Now notice I once again have 3 terms. I'm going to have to find a way to factor 3 terms. So I'll come over here and I'm going to look at it. So this is kind of just like my work. So when I do that, I'm going to pull this apart here and here, because x times x gives me x squared, and I'm going to do the same thing with 16. There's several numbers that I could actually use. We have a positive 4 and a positive 4 because both 4 times 4 gives me 16. That's one combination. And the other combination that we could also try could be a positive 8 and a positive 2. And it looks like that's a negative, so what we probably want to do is make both of these negatives, not positives. Because a negative times a negative is still going to give me a positive. Remember, I'm looking for that middle term by doing this method. If you take a look, it's kind of probably obvious to you, is that if I cross multiply these two, I end up with a negative 2x. Here I would end up with a negative 8x. And when I add them together, I end up with a negative 10x, which is what I'm looking for. So therefore, my factors that I will actually end up with are here. So it looks like this answer is going to be 2x, then in parentheses, x minus 8, but also x minus 2. So there's that one. It's completely factored. Okay, so that will take care of that.